Welcome back, everyone, to the Sales Ops Effect. Today, we are talking about networking with Ina Jeffrey. Hello, Ina. This is the Sales Ops Effect, where we drive predictable growth in small to medium-sized businesses.
Hi, nice to see you. Nice to hear you, I suppose.
Yeah, it's nice to
And
meet
thank you
you.
for having me.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. You're very welcome. I'm glad you're here. Because networking is something that we know is important, but it's not something that I personally have ever been comfortable with. I think a lot of people aren't comfortable with it. And I also don't think it's just a split down the middle thing between introverts and extroverts, because people think, well,
Mm.
extroverts, they just want to talk to everybody all the time. Technically, I'm an extrovert. Um, and I love talking, but I love talking about things that I'm interested in, not the general chit chat. So, seeing as at the time of recording, it's 2024, and everyone knows we went through a very interesting time where we were locked down for a fair few years, right? And we've been out of it for at least a fair few months, depending on where you are. How do you think networking has changed pre and post pandemic? Many people had to get used to being online and on video very,
Hmm.
very, very quickly. And
Yes.
so we had more online events. But seeing as networking, what changes have you seen? How do you feel about it?
That's a really good question. I think during the pandemic, we were all quite excited to go online and do everything online because we could do it in our jammies. It was brilliant. You can look the part up here and you can, sit there in your jammies the rest of the time. So, or with your fluffy shoes on. It didn't really matter. And we were all excited about this. But I think through that came a little bit of online fatigue, and I now see a lot more businesses and a lot more events doing face-to-face networking events again because people want to actually see people again rather than just doing it online. And yeah, it's fun, but I have to honestly say I do enjoy the online networking still because it's just so much easier.
Yeah.
You go on just like you go on to this recording. You go on, you go off, you make yourself a cup of tea and you chill out, or you go back to work because we're all busy business owners. So, it's very important. Whereas when you go to face, you have to travel. So it's half an hour or 15 minutes or an hour, depending on where you are. If you're down in London, you're probably away for an hour and a half before you even get back. So that's half a day of your working day away. And that's quite time consuming and tiring as well, commuting, for example. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
Yes, definitely. And I'm a person, I find traveling of any kind just really tiring. I don't fully
Mm,
understand why. Um, but I do. And so it's like if I'm going somewhere, I am going there because I really want to be there. And,
mhm.
you can't predict everything in life, but because there's just so much anxiety around networking in person, because
Yes.
me particularly, I don't do small talk very well. I
Mhm.
do deep talk very, very well about
Mhm.
many different kinds of subjects.
Yeah.
But because so much of it feels like small talk, that's also extra draining. So the
Mhm.
idea for me to get on a train to travel for an hour to get to a networking event.
I mean, I work with a lot of neurodivergent business owners, and for them, networking is usually something they don't want to do. It's overwhelming. They don't know where they're coming into. It's sensory overwhelm. So, doing that face to face, unless it's specifically for neurodivergent business owners, so they know they're going to be in a safe space, it can be really overwhelming for a lot of people. Whereas if you're going into a virtual one, an online one, if you don't like it, if you don't feel it, you can just leave if you want. Whereas if you are an hour and a half away from your house, you traveled all the way there, leaving, it's probably considered a bit more rude when you leave, just walk out rather than just maybe, clicking a button and disappearing into thin air.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another thing, depending on if you're neurodivergent or if you have maybe a disability or anything like that, there's lots of things to consider.
And also, and I think we'll probably circle back to this towards the end, for people who do events and things like that, there was one event that I went to, which they did say up front they were trying to bring the energy of the American conferences over to Britain. And yeah, I know. To a degree, I get that because nobody wants to sit in a place that's basically like being in school and going, la, 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 la. Some energy would be good.
Yeah.
But the energy that he was trying to bring was so very different culturally that it felt like we don't do forced fun.
No, we don't.
It's you have to earn the happy clappy. We're not just gonna come with it because different cultures just behave differently. So,
Yeah.
and you could see he was getting annoyed, and it's just like, no, the more you try to force us to have fun, the more we're just going to sit here very, very still.
Yes.
And it's just uncomfortable for everyone. Please don't.
I know.
There's
And I think if you have a network, I'm a serial networker. Ever since I started my business, I networked a lot. I networked my socks off and finding the right groups, networking groups for you is so vital. I mean, I attended somewhere. I thought, oh my God, get me out of here, please. I want to leave. Because it was just so regimented and just very strange. Whereas I'm part of some of them, and they're all different, and there's so many different ways of networking these days. It's not just going into a room, speed networking essentially. There's so many different things. Some of my networking groups do it while they do crafting, or we do a photo walk. So we walk around Glasgow and take pictures, get brand photography taken while we're actually networking with each other. Net walking is a thing. A lot of people do that, take their dogs with them. So it's finding what works for you, I think. And it can be so much fun.
So this is great because I know there's plenty of people listening that be thinking, I didn't know that there were different ways that you could be networking. And I suppose because again, the ones that we're familiar with are the big happy clappy conferences. But how do you know what works for you? And then how do you go about finding groups that are like that?
Trial and error, I'd say. And a recommendation, somebody in my trusted network is like, oh yeah, I've been going to this networking event. That was fun. It's held on a I remember that it was held in a nursery, which is on a farm. So there were always baby animals around, which I'm a sucker for. So I loved going there. We sat on these tiny little nursery chairs, but it was a great networking event. There were kittens, there were little goats. It was great, so everybody had fun. So it is recommendation. If somebody says, yeah, don't go there, that's just boring, I'd probably still try it because that's just who I am. I'm a naturally curious person and like to try new things and see if it works for me. And if it doesn't, I don't go back. And if it does work for me, sign me up for the rest of the year. I'm here for it. It is really trial and error because we're all different. And what my friend likes or my business partner likes is completely different to what I might like. So it's
Yes.
just finding what works for you, really.
But I do like that asking for recommendations because
Mm.
if you are at an event where you might not like the event, but you've managed to have a good connection with one person, if you then ask them, because if we say vibe is like for like, if you ask
Mm-hmm.
somebody who you vibe with, what other networking events or things like that do you go to that you follow and things like that, then chances are you'll just, if you keep asking people, you'll find more and more people that
Mm-hmm.
are like you and
Yeah.
that will tell you what you like and what you don't like and actually writing it down, so that whole
Mm-hmm.
just figuring out what you like and what you don't like, don't just think about it.
Yeah,
Write it
exactly.
down. Do you know what, I really didn't like how loud this was,
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to forget next time.
Yes, I love that.
My brain is like a sieve sometimes, and if you do go for too long, it's just like, oh no, I went to a networking event about a month ago. It was a small-ish event, so there was maybe 20, 30 people,
Mm-hmm.
and it was in the back of a very posh, nice restaurant. What was good about that one is that there was a lot of people from the host company there. I like to go to places early rather than just walking in because I find it extremely difficult, basically impossible to interrupt other people's conversations. I don't know how
Yeah.
to do it. It makes me feel really uncomfortable. So if I go
Mm,
there early, then chances are people will come to me. So what
mm,
was great about them having lots of people from the host company there is that somebody always came to come and talk to me.
yeah.
And then other people coming in are much more likely to join that group because there's somebody there. If I was to
Mm,
join a group that was already talking, I'm much more likely to go and join one where there is one host person in it, but I'm just really uncomfortable. So I
yeah.
did like the fact that they had so many people from the host company there rather than just two or three people flitting around and just
Hmm.
leaving people like me to just hang in the corner looking at the menu.
It's coming back to this inclusivity part, because not everybody is comfortable just joining a conversation or putting themselves out there or talking in general. In the beginning, when I started networking, I was like deer in headlights. I don't want to just talk to these people. I don't know who they are, what they're doing. I was new in business overall. So, but I quickly figured out, I was like, yeah, you just have to be out here and just talk, and people will naturally come to you if they're interested. And people that include you right away and run an event in a way that is very inclusive to everyone and that makes it comfortable for people to come in and just kind of join a conversation.
When you're looking for new events to go to, do you just do a simple Google search? Do you find ones that are more local to you? How do you go about it?
I haven't Googled any lately. I
Hmm.
did in the beginning. I was like, right, I started my business. I need to meet people. I need to be out
Yeah.
there. I need to start being visible. Where do I start? And you Google networking events near me, and then, loads of stuff comes up. The first one that I joined was the FSB, Federation of Small Businesses. So I joined a few of them and liked the vibe and found new people in those meetings. And then it just went from there. So since then, I don't think I've Googled anything since. It was literally all recommendation from somebody else. And they're like, oh, yeah, I also go to this event. Why don't you come along as my guest? Or why don't you just, come along? It's a free event. Just come along next week and we'll see if you like it. And so that's how it happened. So it's finding the first one is literally Googling networking events near me or business networking events near me, and then just go with it.
What's your view on free versus paid events?
I like them both. But I
Mm.
feel that if you pay for them, people are a bit more invested. If it's a free for all, then people just kind of rock up or don't rock up, or they say, yeah, I'm gonna come along, and then they don't because they don't lose anything. Online, it's different, but face to face, having a free one there can be discouraging, I would say, because you go there, you sign up for it, yeah, as a free event, you go there, and then there's 5 people there, and you're like, yeah, that was a waste of 3 hours of my life. I mean, on the other hand, sometimes small events like that can be really beneficial because you get to talk to everybody and it's much more intimate. Whereas sometimes if you have 50 people there, you're never going to talk to 50 people. It's just not
I
going to
think
happen.
I'm gonna see if I can go to more small events, maybe more
Hmm.
small local events. That might help a lot. When it comes to online events, how does networking work there? Because I haven't been to one in a long time, but when they started kicking off during and after the pandemic, if you're there for the main speeches, right? You're there and you're tuning in.
Hmm.
But my personal opinion, I used to run training events. During the breaks, you can come here and network. And it's like, no, during the breaks, I need to go and get myself a cup of tea. I need to go
Yeah.
and stretch my legs. I need to do those other things. They weren't
Hmm.
actually building in particular time for people to sit in the networking room and
Hmm.
talk and things like that. So, from your experience, how are online events now? How do they usually work?
The majority of the networking events I have attended are an hour, maximum an hour and a half. So you don't really need to plan any breaks because we all can live without a cup of tea for an hour and a half most of the time. Of course, the postie will come in the middle of your meeting. Luckily, the postie came before I came onto this call. The events that I go, it varies. Sometimes they have a guest speaker. Sometimes they have like a member highlight. Other times they do literally just breakout rooms where you speak to a variety of different people or have one-to-ones with different people. It really has evolved. Because I find myself, if I go to an event and there's a speaker, and sometimes I'm not really honestly interested in what they're because it's not relevant to me. But the beauty about online events is while they're speaking, while I can still listen and maybe even get a good nugget of information, I can do some clearing out my inbox in between, or answering some social media messages while I do that, and it doesn't hurt anybody. I'm still there, I'm still present. I can also check the chat box where people put their details in. So there's lots of new exciting changes, and I like the variety now that not every event is the same online. It just varies.
Yeah, so you never know what platform it's going to be. You don't know how it's going to be structured. It is actually going to be new. But something you said there was very interesting with online events in that you don't have to like the topic, the main topic of why everyone's there. As long as the people who are your ideal client or people who you actively want to network with because they know your ideal client are there, you don't have to be
Exactly.
there for the topic, which I didn't actually think about.
And something somebody told me right in the beginning of my networking journey, I was like, stop thinking about selling to these people. Stop thinking about the people that you are meeting as your clients or your potential clients or as leads, because you never know who listens. 90% of the time in networking events, these people aren't my ideal client, or they're not in the stage of their business yet that they can afford me or work with me, or anything like that. But they might know somebody that does. That's how I got my first 3 clients through, my first client was through a networking event. Somebody knew somebody that needed a VA that was drowning in his own chaos, referred me to them, and he's still my client nearly 3 years later. So it's brilliant. And that's the power of networking, is not the people, not just the people that are in this event, because they're probably might not be your ideal client, but being out there and being visible. And the more you're there, the more people remember you, because everybody online remembers my wall and all my plans.
Yes. Yes.
Another beauty of that. And when I go out to face-to-face networking, I usually wear a really bright, colorful dress, because people know I'm colorful, and that's how they know me and remember me. And then they tell me, "You're everywhere, aren't you?" I was like, "Yes, my plan is working."
Yes, how to be memorable. And that doesn't mean you have to go in something like that's completely not you either. Your background is like that, and you've got your lovely hair color because that's what you like. It's not because you were
Exactly.
trying to be, very, very colorful. That's just who you are.
Yeah, exactly. I always have been. I mean, well, not when I was a teenager. I was wearing all black when I was a teenager. I think we all did.
Same.
I do like a good colorful dress. I mean, even my colleagues when I was still working in corporate know this. They always say, "Oh, there's another colorful dress." It's always been that way. So yeah, and that's how I show up, and that's how people remember me, in the combination of being visible, because that's what networking really is for your business.
Yeah.
You need to be visible, if it's on social media or through networking, and ideally a combination of both.
Is that your main route for how you get clients then? Your main route for sales? Is that via networking, or is that in combination with other things?
These days, it's a lot of referrals,
Mm,
but it all comes back to me starting networking when I started my business.
of course.
And I know a lot of people say, oh, networking, it's like, oh, it's not for me, sitting in a room with a lot of people, blah, 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 blah. But I thought, you know what? I need to put myself out there. I want to run a successful business. I want to build my business quick, and I want to be out there. So I started networking. And in the beginning, I was probably networking 3 times a week, which was complete overkill. And I was exhausted.
And that would have been in person as well, I imagine.
The majority of those were virtual ones, so
Mm.
from that perspective, that was quite good. But there were, I think, once a week at least, I did an in person one, and in combination with being really active on social media and just being out there and posting a lot, the combination between the two really brought me out there, and people remembered me. I went on a call in a networking event last week or the week before, and I came into a one-to-one with somebody, and she was like, "You're everywhere." I was like, "Good. That's what I want to hear. That's what I want to do. I
Nice.
know that I'm awesome at what I do, and bring people together. That's
Yeah.
what my intention is." And also make people comfortable talking to me.
Mm.
My main job is talking to people, and connecting people, and working for people, of course. But through talking to them, it's very important, especially for my neurodivergent clients, talking to them and getting the information out of them and finding out how I can help somebody. And that goes for networking as well. How can I help somebody? They might not be my client, but I can still maybe help somebody connect to an accountant they're looking for, or somebody that does website design they're looking for. That's what I do. That's what I love doing, connecting people that need help.
But that leads me very nicely onto my next question then. So you're coming at it from how can you help them? And that isn't necessarily just going straight in with your services. That's just as a human, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're in these events in person, then do you walk up to them? I mean, I know some walk up to you. Basically, what's your opening line?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think I have an opening line, to be honest, because
Mm.
I'm not scripted. I
Yeah.
don't have a script. I do have an elevator pitch written down somewhere,
Yes.
but it's not one that I memorized and then blah, 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 talk about. I usually try and see when I come in somewhere what the vibe is and judge from there, because sometimes you can have an event that's quite, stuffy and maybe a bit more
Yeah.
formal, and otherwise other events, people are really chilled and relaxed and you just walk up to people. So it really depends on what the vibe is in the event. That's very important. And I usually just introduce myself. I don't introduce what I am or what I do. It's introducing myself first, and maybe
Hi, I'm
listen. Hi,
Ina.
I'm Ina. I'm the colorful person here,
Yeah.
or the person with a funky t-shirt, depending on
Yes.
where I am. That just listening to people. Sometimes if I join a conversation, which I sometimes do, because I just feel awkward just standing in a corner by myself. So I just join
Mm.
somebody. Hopefully there's somebody there that I know and that I can just kind of, hi.
At this point, there usually is.
Now there is. Everywhere I go, I know somebody, which is great, which makes things
Yes.
so much easier. If you're, maybe shy or introvert, and you're not feeling comfortable going by yourself, ask a friend, ask a business buddy to come with you. Hey, fancy going there? Let's go together. At least that takes the edge of it. Coming back to your question, yeah, just listen, follow the conversation, and not take the conversation over, but join it. And then
Mm.
naturally you're going to ask, oh, so what do you do? Also, oh, that's really cool. So here's what I do. They usually ask what you do anyway at some point.
Yeah.
If you come into a face-to-face networking event, usually there's a big group and people talk to each other. There's little groups, and then you get together, somebody speaks, introduces, and then you have little breakout sessions. And then you get to meet people anyway. And then the next kind of break where people just get together chatting is a lot easier because you already know some people. So that's how it works for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've gone to events with people before when I've been feeling particularly anxious. It's a double-edged sword sometimes because if I go with a friend, then I know I'll just talk to that friend all day.
Mhm.
To be fair, because I mostly don't walk up and talk to other people anyway.
Mhm.
How much difference is it going to be? But I definitely won't if I'm with a friend unless next time we go, we have an active plan to say, okay, for the next half an hour, we're not going to talk to each other.
Yeah.
I might have to do that.
I went to Atomicon last month,
Mm.
which is a humongous event. There were 1,000 people there. The day before, there were little smaller events pre-scheduled. So there was one for moms in business. There was one for neurodivergent business owners, which I went to. There was 5 or 6 different ones. So there were smaller events, but you could choose where to go to. So I knew going to a neurodivergent event, I will feel safe and I will feel comfortable. I wouldn't have to pretend, I could just be myself. And everybody was comfortable. Everybody, if you just wanted to sit in a corner and listen to everybody else, you could do that. If you want to go and chat with people, you could do that. The next day, going into the main event, which was humongous, as I said,
Mm.
I felt a lot more comfortable because even though there were 1,000 people there, I knew 30 of them already. And I could go up to them and say, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
That make my life so much easier. So even at big events, it's finding that little group that you kind of feel comfortable with. That's what's important. You need to find a bunch of people, and you'll know that yourself. If you walk into a room full of people, you will always find one or two people that you're drawn to. Just
Yes.
go to them
Yes.
because they're your people usually. Trust your gut is how I
Yes.
roll.
I can feel like that vibe synchronicity. I don't want to disturb them. My brain goes into this weird autopilot
Yes.
of just go and stand in the corner. Where you've got events that are in person, they may be very, very large. So the 1,000 people, or they could be a few hundred people. What do you prefer? Events that go over a few days or an event where it's one and done when it's in person?
Generally throughout the year, one and done. An hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, especially the more regular ones that I go to, the kind of local ones, just an hour, 2 hours, that's enough for me because you usually see people that you already know and you build some relationships there. For bigger events like Atomicon, or I'm going to one in October as well, which is a full day.
What's that one?
It's Pink Fizz. She does a social impact event. It's in Manchester. So I'm traveling because obviously I'm up in not so sunny Scotland. And Atomicon was in Newcastle. This one is in Manchester. And I'm also thinking of going to one in November in London. And about that yet. That's the from Leah Turner. She has her Christmas party, and
Tina Turner, is that the lady
the LinkedIn
really
lady.
with lots of tattoos?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
the one. So I'm
yeah,
part of her community as well.
yeah.
And so she throws a Christmas party in
Mm,
London this year. So I'll probably go down there. But then I know a lot of the people there already. So it's a lot easier for me to walk in.
yeah.
So for those bigger events, I think I prefer having like a smaller pre-event so you can go and vibe check. And then if there's a big event the next day, that's absolutely fine. Last year, I didn't do any of those big events. I just did local, smaller networking events. This
Yeah.
year is the first time that I actually traveled 3 hours to go to an event.
So what led to that change? Was it, do you just wanted a different change of pace or?
Yeah, I think I've evolved. My business is growing. I'm scaling up. I'm, obviously want to be out there a lot more and be in front of people's faces. Plus, the event I went to, the Atomicon one, there was so much knowledge there. There were so many amazing speakers that, that I had major FOMO when everybody started talking about going. I was like, I want to go too. And a week before it happened, I actually only bought my ticket a week before and then booked my train and my hotel. I'm going to Newcastle next week. He was like, what? That was hilarious. So there's going to be some amazing speakers there. My coach is actually launching her book at that event as well.
Fair enough. I get that. So is there anything that you would like people to know about networking that we haven't covered in this conversation?
We covered a lot.
Something that you wish past Ina would know.
I would tell her to not do 3 networking events a week,
Yeah.
calm
Yes.
down, woman. That's what I want. In the beginning, you want to try everything, and if you have
Yeah.
the capacity, fair dues, and don't, if you're just starting your business and you've been so used to working in corporate or wherever and having to conform to this box that you're in, you don't have to do that anymore. I'm now myself more than I've ever been in my whole life. And I attract the right people. You will attract your people no matter what you do. So just be yourself. And if you want to stand in the corner at the beginning and just observe, do that. If that's what you're comfortable, do that. People will recognize that and automatically come to you and say, hey, are you cool? Are you all right? Do you need anything? So yeah, just be you. That's that's the main thing.
Thank you. I think a lot of people will find that helpful as well because, again, it's different strokes for different folks. You were talking about
Mm,
American events versus British events or European events culturally.
mhm.
And it's like there's no one right way to do events. It
Yeah.
is really just what works for you, because one of these days, depending on the particular vibe, I might like to go to a big, loud, shouty event. It definitely isn't me all the time, though.
No,
So
no.
thanks for saying that. I think a lot of people would um, feel better from having heard it from someone who does do it a lot, that you don't
Mhm.
have to be every single place all of the time.
No, you don't.
So,
And also, just quickly on the big events,
yeah,
it took me a week to recover from it.
there you go.
I don't know if it was just because there was so much information or the amount of people, but I usually don't mind a lot of people. But I think because it was so intense, a lot of people plus a lot of information, and then me wanting to do all of the things at the same time didn't
Mm,
help. But yeah, just make sure in the beginning, if you are not an extrovert and if you're not, not easy with a lot of people, just start slow.
yeah. And, build that rest time into your schedule. So if you do want to do
Mhm.
the big events, maybe it's a once a quarter kind of a thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't do it any more than that, I think. I mean, these two events that I have coming up, that's gonna be it for the year. Some small
Yeah.
networking, yes, but other than that,
No, that's good. And you've lit a fire under me anyway, so I'm gonna go and find
yay.
some local events to start going to and just starting to get to know people. You hear
Yeah.
people say, go with your selling hat on, and it's like I don't like that. That makes me feel kind of
Mm,
gross.
yeah.
Because if
I
everybody's doing that, then you're all just going in as sharks.
I can highly recommend, if you're just starting out, my first events were with the FSB online events because they're free and they do have local events as well, face to face that you can go to. I would recommend starting with that and then take it from there. They're easy events. They're only an hour usually or an hour and a half max. And yeah, it does work.
And if they're online, you can go to a lot more to sort of build up your resiliency. I think I'm going
Exactly.
to be doing that. I think I'm going to be doing that. I can do it. I can do it.
Of
Okay.
course you can. I'm going to check in on you.
Please do. I will. Okay. Where can our lovely listeners and people watching here find you?
Everywhere. Well, my main playground is LinkedIn. So if you search for Ina Jeffrey, INA Jeffrey, or look at my website, which is believer.co.uk. That's BEELIEVA.co.uk. Or just find me on Facebook or Instagram. As I said, I'm everywhere. Or networking events. If you see me, shout.
Great. Thank you so much. So yes, please do go and check out Ina and make sure you get in touch with her. And do let us know how your networking has gone, listeners and viewers, because yeah, you're not alone. Some people it just comes to naturally. Others, like me, we have to grow to learn and love it. So thank you. We'll be talking again soon. Take care. Have a good week. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, please look at the list of other episodes. I'm sure there's another one that can help you. See you next time.